Hello, hello. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for your patience. Appreciate it. I want to welcome everyone. My name is Iris Torres. I'm the head of industry for the 12th edition of the Guadalajara Film Festival. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for being here. One more time. But before anything, I really just want to start giving my thank yous before I forget. I would like to take the moment to thank the La Universidad de Guadalajara, University of Guadalajara Foundation USA, the Grotman Legacy, and the Guadalajara International Film Festival. Today's panel discussion is to talk about the name of our panel today is the progress and challenge of the LATINX, BIPOC, transgender, non-binary representation in Hollywood. I really hope you enjoy it. And once again, I want to welcome our guest today, Queen Victoria, which is going to be our moderator. And I'm going to let my people from Tammy Salcedo and our panelists. Scotty Jeanette Maiden, please. And last but not less important, Candy Doe Cornejo.
Hola, 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 hola. Buenas tardes. Hi to everybody, todas, todes, y todos. Les queremos dar la bienvenida. We want to welcome everyone to our panel discussion today. So I have the privilege of knowing these wonderful people that are going to be part of this panel. So you definitely want to turn on your phone, press record, share, put on Instagram, and of course don't forget to tag the Guadalajara Film Festival here in Los Angeles. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. Is everybody ready? Listas? Awesome. And just in case you're wondering, you're like, oh, BIPOC community, you're wondering, ¿quién es esa güera on the stage, on the panel? My name is Queen Victoria Ortega. Oh, no, the other way. My friend Scotty. We'll start off with Scotty Jeanette introducing Scotty Jeanette being a writer, also being one of the showrunners that has done amazing work in Hollywood. Within the industry, and also has earned her stripes really spending real time with BIPOC trans community. So that's why she's here on this panel today. Also introducing Candido, my new sister, who I just happened to meet, but is been working in the background, making sure people get casted, and one of the major casters in the industry. Also self-proclaimed bruja, so don't fuck with him, because he will get cursed. And my sister Bambi. Not only, as an activist pushing for systems change across the gamut, from healthcare to access to services for trans people, but also leaving her footprint that the industry does more. Actually, that will be where we start today, right? We have to really start with addressing how do we make those changes. So the first question that we have today will go to Bambi. I guess a little bit of myself. I'm Queen Victoria Ortega. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be of service. So anytime you need me to participate, pick my brain, or any way I can be of service to comunidad, that's where my heart lies. So, and being able to, that is, well, I voy para allá, mientras que haga cheque, hay trabajo. But that being said, welcome. And I really want to thank you all to take this conversation out of this room. So that's my challenge to you all today. Using that into transition to our first question is, how have you used, and this is for Bambi, how have you used advocacy to advance the, raising the profile of trans and non-binary people, especially within the industry, because people don't always connect the work that you do in direct services and the industry itself. If you have a couple films that you produce yourself and co-produce, so if you can talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Bueno, primero que nada, quiero dar gracias a mi creador, el Poder Superior. Quiero también honrar la tierra en la cual estamos hoy en día, y también, pues obviamente quiero honrar su presencia. Do we in English or no? But anyways, my Spanglish. For those of you who were not able to understand, I just honor my creator, my higher power for giving me the opportunity to be here. I also honor the land where we're standing on today. I think it's important to recognize that many people, or if not most people, right? Yes, it is true that we have advanced within our society in some aspects, and people think that because we're like some of us are in the eye of the media, or that we're in magazines and things like that, that our social conditions have changed, and that's not true. Here in Los Angeles, there's been studies from LASA, the Los Angeles Homeless Authority, that they have documented that more than 1,000 transgender and conforming people are houseless in Los Angeles, right? And so that is the reality. We continue, even though here in California, right, we live in a state that has the most trans-inclusive legislation and protections. We still have challenges trying to obtain employment, right? And we get discriminated simply because of who we are. We're criminalized because of who we are, and all of the things that come with it, right? And so, for us as an organization, we believe in the empowerment of our community through service provision. So if we are able to support a community where, the basic things that we need, right, like food, housing, things like that, then we're able to empower our community and organize and mobilize our people, right? And so, because there's also not a lot of opportunities in the entertainment industry, it's important that we also tell our stories, right? And so, I started, producing like back in 2012, I think. We produced a short documentary that is called "Dying to Be a Woman," which is, just highlighting the issues of silicone injection in the trans community. And then since then, there have been different things that have been produced. The latest, the Trans-Latino Migrations, which are 25 short stories of trans people who have crossed borders. And currently we're working on a full-length documentary about trans people who are aging. So I think the work that we do just covers a whole bunch of different things that we believe that our society needs to be aware of, and obviously, like you said, take action.
Well, thank you, Brandy. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I just want to thank God the chair delivery when I got on it. Thank you for addressing the challenge. Oh, this is what Travis said. Vamos a hacer a trick. Oh, sí, este sí. Thank you for covering the challenges and also giving an aspect of some of the strategies, which is giving the platform for trans people to write their own stories. We have them. We have the ability and the time to be able to do so. Personally, myself, I'd probably, I give it up to my sister, Bambi, but I'm also an activist myself. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer of the Trans Empowerment Center. And we purposely built in a studio. And one of the strategies that we have is that we're trying to compile a list in partnership with Warner Discovery to make sure that we know who's above and below the line that is trans-identified that wants to be connected. Whether it's for mentorship, being hired, and I say mentorship, try to also, in mentorship, trying to onboard trans people to work also below the line and above the line, in the writing room. Being able to tell our own stories, investing in trans-led projects. Those are some of the strategies that have helped us make some progress. Because I also want to make sure we balance and know that we are making progress, which is great. So, and we can't make progress without knowing that we're interdependent. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the panel around cultura and how we, as trans and non-binary people, actually uplift and bring us back to our cultura and our roots as Latinx people. That being said, I have a question for the panelists, and we'll start over with Davido. Why, people would think, like, why should this film festival include a specific panel around trans and non-binary people and addressing the barriers and the progress? Why is it important to do this?
I think it's important because we need visibility. And we get a lot of challenges as to why it's important to showcase ourselves and showcase our identities. There's this big conversation about what's the queer agenda, what is the trans agenda? And it's interesting because I tell them it's important because we need to showcase ourselves as human beings. We in Hollywood have a very unique and eclectic responsibility because what we showcase on the big screens, what we showcase on the big screens on movies and TV and media and the internet, the world follows. The world sees what's allowed in society, and what we showcase is what they do. And so there was a gentleman who was actually really aggressively telling me, like why is this so important? Like, why do you say that this is a trans character, this is a non-binary character? So I don't understand, why? What's the importance of it? It's like, well, because, do you remember what it was like as an African-American gentleman? And I said, do you remember what it was like to watch a movie in the 40s and 50s? And when you were not represented, or when you were represented, you were the criminal, you were the robber, you were something, but you were never showcased as the main character in the film. You know, and we have African-American families all over the world who are suffering the same thing. And do you remember what it was like to see Halle Berry win the Oscar? You know, the first African-American woman to win, and like, do you remember what that was like? To see your people on the big screen, to see these leads. It's like the same thing with us. You know, we are trans people who have lived experiences just like everybody else does. And that's important to showcase. Like, we're human beings as well. We have stories that deserve to be seen. And so to have panels like this, these beautiful ladies, is that we work hard as well. You know, it's like behind the camera, we have people that have worked behind the camera, people in front of the camera who do a lot of work for organizations. It's like we have a story to be told as well, and we want to normalize that. It's like we're workers, we're filmmakers, we're creators, we're artists, and the more that we do this, it's like the more hopefully it inspires the younger generation. And not just like the individual trans people as well, but also the people that want to oppress us, or they have a distinctive narrative. You could change their mind as well, because that gentleman someone was like, oh, I never thought about that. You know, I never thought about it. It's like, yeah, I just want to be seen as a human being. Is that so, like, what's so wrong about that? So when we see people in power, like, I just got appointed in the Casting Society of America as a first board member and casting director as a trans woman. And people are like, I've never seen that. You know, it's like, I was told that I shouldn't do it. But because of this, we have a program where we go to youth and we train casting assistants. And for the first time ever, we've seen, I think, about 6 students that are trans women and trans men that are in high school that want to take casting seriously and potentially turn into a career because they saw my face, because they saw me speaking, and they said, I think I want to do a career. This is the first time that somebody has invited me that's a trans person, that I could do something professional. So.
Scotty, what would be your response to the same question?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing it up, Andy. I want to thank the native land that we're on, the grace that a blanket guy like me can actually be here, and also just being in your presence, not blowing smoke. The inspiration that your 2 lives is what fuels me as a filmmaker. And so I hope I honor that, and I'm grateful to be here. For me, the most important part is to tell our stories, but also to be seen telling those stories. It's twofold. I think if you talk to most trans people, they thought that they were alone until they started to come out. And generally speaking, especially for those of us in the arts, we never thought that we could be who we were and still have our career. I transitioned at the age of 48. I thought I was going to tank my career. I was one of the top showrunners for adventure survival television, and been married for 25 years. I thought all that stuff was going to go away. First of all, I didn't ever plan on coming out. My body outed me to my wife one morning. And it was because I had never seen anybody in my world who did what I did transition. So that's why it's important to me. Is like we need to be able to see, we need to be able to see ourselves up on the screen, but we also need to be able to see ourselves in the guise of someone who's doing what we're doing, like the high school children that are going to be now could see, oh, I could be a casting director. First of all, a lot of the work we do here is mysterious. I still have to explain to every one of my relatives what a goddamn gaffer is, right? And that's probably good, right? But if you don't know what a gaffer is, you don't know that you could be one. And you don't know, certainly as a trans person or a non-binary person, that you're not going to get beheaded when you come out and try to work in that industry. So I think it's important for us to be seen doing what we're doing. It's important for the festival to recognize this, for us all to be having this conversation, and then, as Queen Victoria said at the beginning of the program, to take this out. You know, it really is about allyship, and the crazy thing is that this is how the white, cisgender, heterosexual men have been doing it all along. They mentor each other. They've got each other's backs. They're the ones who are making sure that there's a pathway for someone to go from high school all the way into a career. It's already happening. So we have to do it for ourselves because we're really against that, because we don't conform to what they've already got built that they think they own, which they don't, but they think they do. So we need to be seen doing it, and we need to be also, of course, doing it. Because otherwise, of the films that get made every year, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of people to believe in that film. That's why there aren't gazillions of movies made every year, there's only a few. So if there's only one trans story, that's a fad, and that's something that can be dismissed next year. Oh, we did trans stories last year, right? Look at how many major feature films that involve trans characters are made. It's all thought of as, well, we did that last year. It's usually played by a cisgender person too. So we need to be able to tell as many of our stories because we are as individual as we are individuals. And we need to be able to constantly turn the corner of helping to round out that we are all humans. And we're humans not in your way, we're humans in our way. We're humans in that particular person's way. No two trans people are alike. We don't have an agenda except, as Candido says, to be a human. And everybody else gets a chance to. So we have to make that chance.
Thank you. And Bambi?
No, but I think I think it's important that we as a community, as people, right, that we build our agenda, right? Because we know that money is power. We know that politics is power, and so we need to be able to be strategic about how we are going to bring our people into the next 100 years, right? Because we need to be able to organize, and we need to be able to build our economic power, right? Like trans people are the most poor of any other population, and we have to recognize that. I think our politicians do have a responsibility, right? Like they are public servants, yet obviously when they get into office, they forget about all of that, right? And I think each industry and within our society, each institution does have a responsibility to people. And we as trans people have experienced institutional violence since the invasion of the colonizers, right? And so we need to be able for us to empower ourselves, to empower our community, and to develop that agenda or that strategy, right? That is going to help us to be at a better place and to be integrated, like you said, in the tapestry, not just of the entertainment industry, but also in all of the institutions that we have within our society that have oppressed us, that have marginalized us, and that have kept us, in the bottom of the bottom of the pool.
How is a panel like this important and part of that process?
How is it what?
How is a panel like this important to that?
Well, I mean, I think this panel definitely, the hope is that, not only brings, opens minds and hearts, right? But that, like you said, right, that people also takes into action, right? Like they actually have conversations like this, and that they all recognize that, that we are people, right? And so, some of our friends are transphobic. Some of our friends are, violent towards us. And if we hear even a conversation that is that creates bias against us. I think we have a responsibility to say, like, that's not cool. Don't say that, right? Because all of that generates violence, right? And so I'm actually a bit disappointed, that this room should have been full, right, of people. But I understand, people have other things to do, but the fact that they don't think that this is important to hear what we have to say, it's a bit disappointing, that even, people are not taking this path serious.
Thank you, panelists. So we're going to go on to the next question. One of the things that's important to note is, we all get to form part of creating cultura and culture. We also get part in playing on what has happening through historical trauma, right? What things have been taken out of our culture. In the vein of that, and thinking about our cultura and culture in general, how we move that forward, there are some threads that have come along, right? Muches, the Dine, the Rute, the Hijra, whatever you want to call trans and non-binary people, Two-Spirit, we are not new. So there's been dirt on the earth, there's been quakes. Let's just got it. That being said, the question to the panelists is, how have trans and non-binary people played a part in culture in media? For example, off the top of my head, the word slave, catch the tea, reading somebody to filth like nobody can. In Latino culture, I know Gloria Trevi, Ibis Chacon, the great surgeons that we had access to. We're providing sexiness to the screen, so stuff like that. That's what I wanted to kind of put forward to the panel, thinking like, what are some of the other nuanced cultural aspects that sometimes get glossed over and not credited and erased from media that trans people have contributed? Who would like to take the question first?
I'll take a stab at it. I think, the joke when I first came out was, you're the first trans person that I know about, right? I was going to come up with a pithy title for my book, and I was going to say, the first trans woman that has ever come out that you know about, right? This is the first trans chef that you know about. This is the first trans television show that you know about, because for so many years, if we came out, we were having some big problems. But there are some famous people, my favorite example I used the other day is Wendy Carlos, the composer for Clockwork Orange, right? There's so many, mostly white, trans people who have at least the cover to come out. Wendy was she's a fierce ass woman who went back and made them change her name retroactively on all her credits of her movies that she had done prior to her transition. Demanded it with court orders, and she had the money because she had been making a lot of money as a film composer to do that, but she also had the power. Everybody else, I've done countless shows for TV shows. If I get someone who later on comes to me and says, hey, can you change my credit? I'm like, yeah, honey, that's not going to happen because it's just a technological whatever, but she was able to pull that off. My point about that is that the contributions that trans people have and non-binary people have been putting in film is already always there. It's just never talked about. Because sometimes the person who's at the position of having gotten through their Hollywood career to be working on films that actually push the needle one way or the other, didn't focus on being trans or non-binary. They focused on being a cinematographer or a composer or whatever. And that's what we kind of hope to do, but I don't think we have that luxury. And again, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, and I think we can pick it up later on. We should have an agenda. I agree with you there. It is something that we have to, we do have to change the culture and then be able to change culture. So that's just a quick examples. I'm sure that we all have our favorite examples of trans and non-binary people who have contributed, but I'm not the first trans woman to run an adventure survival show with a military-grade cast. but I was in their life. And I changed the Navy SEAL and the Green Beret and the Royal Air Force SEER instructor who were my cast members. When I came out to them, they called the network up and they said, just in case you're wondering, we're with her. So that's kind of the smaller change. It's not the big global change that's going to be written up in Hollywood Reporter, but they know it now. And they know a trans person. I contributed to changing and opening their minds. And actually contributed to them making feel like they were noble people because they accepted me. So they get a pat on the back, which for cis people they seem to need, but we'll take that right through so we can get them.
Camilo? Yeah, I think that there's two things. I think that the first, there's two things that we always think about. The first is, I think it's important to recognize the work that we do. Okay, like I really want to say it has nothing to do with my gender identity. I wish that we were living in a society where that wasn't a thing that was important enough to talk about, but it is because, again, there's so few of us that are doing it. And so, for example, Wendy Carlo is a perfect example, like a genius composer, phenomenal, and then they were forced to wear like the sideburns, when they were talking about how they made The Shining and things like that. But it's like, why did that matter? Like why did this person have to do this? But then I love that they went back and said, I want to change my credit because here's the reason why. It's like it's to showcase that we can do it and to normalize our gender identities. Like there's so much work to be done just to normalize who we are. It's just the sad fact of the society that we live in today. But there's so many genius people that work, like yourself and everybody here, like the Wachowskis, for example. Like Mona Wachowski is somebody that I've always admired as a director. And then she came out, and but they had already established this line of work. And then so when she transitioned, it was easier to have a Wachowski come out. And it was easy. I wouldn't say it was easy for me to come out as trans woman because I had already established a line of work. I already had an Emmy nomination. I already won an Arias Award for casting. I was already at the studio as an executive level, and then I came out, and then so those people are now saying, "Oh, I know I'm a trans woman," "Oh, I know," and it's like, yeah, it's like it's just a thing. I please don't see me for my gender identity. Please see me for my work, because my work speaks for itself. It has nothing to do with who I am or how I identify, but it's important to say that so we can normalize that, like, hey, I'm the first trans casting director who's out there. I'm the first trans director or whatever, and I'm sure there's more. And here's the thing, like, older generations, I'm sure there was a casting director that was probably, wanted to transition or, but they were just too afraid because, just like me, we were told that you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I used to dance with her at the Oakwood.
So, yeah, I think that, those people, they couldn't, and so the reason why we talk about it is to be able to say, like, I've had enough, we want to break that barrier. And then we have culture, we're talking about culture, like, we have our own cultures that we're fighting against sometimes, like the Latinos. I'm half Mexicana, half Salvadoran, and then, we have some Mexicanos like, oh, that's not normal, that's not, but I was like, no, actually, it was. We're from Southern Mexico, we're from Tlaxcala, and Oaxaca and Puebla, it's like you had the muchas. It was part of culture before you showed up and killed their sisters and their brothers. And then we have the Huintes and Madlejes, So when I did this film for Disney, and I was going around and talking to organizations and different tribal people, you would be surprised at how many Native Americans passed on the project because they didn't want to be associated with a film that was about Two-Spirit people. And I had to have conversations with some of them, like, you do know that this was part of your culture, though. I do know about Mandalay people, I do know about Huintes and the Dinans and everything, but because of the colonization, it was normalized to frown upon us. And we have to re-educate our own cultures, which is linked, but it's an obligation that we have to continue educating. So.
I think tienes que sacar el penacho, bro. Down, do whatever. I think it's important to recognize that trans people are sacred people, right? And that is why our society hates us, right? One, because we're truthful to ourselves and to the world, right? And that is one of the things that the world needs to do, right? That's why, we're attacked. That's why we are hated upon. That's why, we're killed, right? But I think it's important to recognize that all of this started when the invasion happened, right? Because in our cultures, we are sacred people, and we are honor as sacred people. We are healers. We are creators. We are people who embrace people, right? But nowadays we have to always, walk around with shields because we don't know who's going to attack us in whatever way, whether it's verbally or physically, and even to the point that we are killed. They said that we, trans women particularly walk with targets on our back, right? Which is true. And so, I think it's important to recognize that, with invasion and through the indoctrination of our people, the white man has tried to erase our existence, right? But we are, strong people, and resilient people, and beautiful people, and we should be valued for the contributions that we bring to our society. And so, they couldn't erase us there. They have not been able to erase us, and they will not erase us. We are going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to empower ourselves, and we're going to continue to exist in this world in whatever way we're destined. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Bendy. You're welcome, mortals who are hearing us out there. We welcome you. That being said, I think it's such a powerful statement to really take back, and going into the next question is how I see, and one of the things I love about our trans and non-binary community is that you give us a rag and we'll make a gown. You give us adversity and we will create purpose out of it, which is why you see the progress that is happening. And we're not done, right? This is just part of it, and you all who are sitting here get to be part of that progress. The next question being is, taking into account the progress component, really looking at like solutions, like what are some of the movements that need to happen within the industry for meaningful and impactful inclusion of trans and non-binary people?
There needs to be action after conversation, because we have so many conversations, right? Like this is a conversation. And then sometimes what happens is we are pitching in an echo chamber. We're talking amongst ourselves, but the people that need to hear this conversation is not. And so, and I'm creating a lot of projects within the casting society where I'm trying to educate casting executives and casting directors on our people and what it's like, and because it starts like casting directors, we're working with the writers and producers still, so we still have a chance to do something, and so we're having plenty of panels, plenty of conversations, and then I always notice that it's like, okay, like the people are not here that should be hearing this conversation. We need to approach those people and say, and that's what I do. I have no problem walking into the studio and saying, this is what I want, like this is, and by the way, these are the terms, this is the verbiage, this is the vocabulary that we use. We created a document that spoke about like, this is what non-binary means, these are the appropriate verbiage, how you ask for pronouns, and et cetera, et cetera. And I give it to them. I give it to the studio heads, and I give it to my bosses, and I was like, by the way, like this is something that you should know. And then they almost have the audacity to say like, well, why is this important? It's like, I'm like, hello, I'm literally right here. Like, I'm literally right in front of your face, and I'm trying to educate you on something that you're saying that you don't really care about. So I think that following up with action, and it's funny because people sometimes say like, well, why are you so loud about this? It's like because if we weren't loud, nobody would hear. Like we're gonna continue doing our work. That this panel is gonna finish, but we're gonna continue doing what we do. So the right people get to listen. Like I know plenty of people go, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there. It's like yeah, and you should, because they're the VPs, they're the CEOs, and they're not. And so I think it's important to reach those people, and it's an obligation for us to continue educating the people that need to hear it. And the problem is, more than half of those people don't want to hear it. It's easier to sit in silence and not acknowledge what's happening. But when it's people that feel me, like I'm literally inside you.
Pues qué culeros. Porque somos chingones. I'm Scotty.
Well, I want to echo a little bit of what Candido was saying. Part of it is that we all have to go out of here and just do whatever is the next thing in front of us. And mentorship is incredibly important. I've always been super passionate about it. I helped create the showrunner workshop for the Writers Guild of America because, all the stuff that I know after 10 years of doing, that end of the world of my little sliver of nonfiction at that point was done by mistake. I would lead, a crew of 60 into the Amazon jungle for 3 months because that was something the schedule was put together by somebody in New York. Like, we're out here for 3 fucking months. Like, how do I keep people alive here, right? So, anyways, I'm a big fan of mentoring shit, and I got to where I got because somebody always grabbed me and took me under the wing. So that's number one. Is like you do your own world first. You do the things like. Think of how many places that you're in right now that are not queer spaces where people say my pronouns are, and they just do it as a matter of course. So we are able to, I don't know if that's exactly what you meant by cultura, but I assume it had a little bit more to it. But we are slowly changing on that levels of, that is also a sign of progress, is that you don't have to have that fucking argument with your grandma again about why are they them? Because it's proper English, grandma. If you don't know someone's gender, then you say they or them until you know it, and probably find out that they are they or them. So it has always been proper English. It's never been not proper English, whatever these clowns are saying. The other part of it is like just in the queer community already, one of our virtues is supposed to be, not always, but it's supposed to be complete inclusivity. I am as binary as fuck for me. I never, ever, ever wanted to be anywhere other than where I am now. I was over there, and now I'm over here. That's me alone. For all of my non-binary friends and sisters and brothers and theys and thems, they do them. I don't care. I can support them without knowing all of the little things that I have questions about that are not necessarily mine to even ask. I can still support them and love them in the way that they want to be loved. It doesn't take any extra effort. And so if we do that, if we're able to be our own authentic selves, and I don't mean authentic like to who we are as our identity, because I think that's a really weird word that I never related to, but authentic to being a human being. Respect and love for everyone is a virtue of our community. And we can be that all the time, and we can be that without fear. That's the other part. So much of what we do when we're in our careers is the political dance. Who do I have to know? Who do I have to be nice to? Who do I have to blow? Whatever it takes to get to the next gig. And that is part, that is a part of it. This is Hollywood, and you don't know how that person got in charge, and probably don't want to know how they got in charge because it will really piss you off. But you still have to play the game. But you can always still do it with respect and love. Doing it without those things is because you yourself are insecure and you yourself are fearful. So we do it from the reason why we're sacred people, from a lived experience part, is because we had to go on a journey to be who we are when we come out that taught us exactly who we are. And that's why we scare the fuck out of people. Because we have made that journey and we're saying you need to do that too. You don't need to come anywhere other than to be more of who you are.
I'm going to do some of the things I learned. Is that one correct?
That's good. That means I have 30 seconds. Okay, good. So with my last 30 seconds, what I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, I'm going to transition us into, no pun intended, into the last question, because we do want to get questions and answers so y'all can think about that. So for the panelists, the last question will be, what are some of the projects you're currently working on that you would love people to support you on? I'm going to be shameless and plug my own project that I just got into my head. Candido, thank you for bringing up the fact that we need to have things happen tangibly afterwards, and we have a great, I get the privilege of being able to read whatever the hell I want at the Transgender Empowerment Center. So we have a great friend that leads women in media, and I just thought, like, why isn't there like trans and non-binary people in media? We to like coalesce and really create an agenda around that. So I'm gonna meet with my friend and see how we can learn that. That's gonna be.
Our organization, that's why you're in there.
Yes, let's do it. We're gonna be doing more meaningful work. So you hear it today. That's what I'm gonna be working on. So yeah. What about you? Anything you're working on that you would like people to support?
Yes, there's so much that we're working on, and we are,
En un minuto, ya no te
Sí.
pases.
well, because, anyways, so there's so many things that we're working on, but one of the things that we are actively working on right now is that we are going to get a permanent home to where we are going to be delivering our services, and where it's going to be like our headquarters. So we're purchasing a 20,000 square foot space that we're going to build, and we're going to have, all kinds of services for our people. So we need $20 million to build. So that's one of the things, but we're doing a lot of like really great work. We're doing anti-hate work, we're doing political work, we are pushing for legislation, we are empowering people, we are doing a lot of leadership development, we're doing statewide work, we're doing national work. So there's a lot of stuff that we're involved in doing, but I wanted to say, related to the previous question that I didn't have a chance to answer, that I think we all have an opportunity to either be part of history in a good way, or be part of and continue to being brainwashed by the right. We have been brainwashed for many years, and if we're conscious about who we are and what we do, we can transform our society. So I want to invite you to be part of something great that is happening, and don't miss on that opportunity.
Thank you. Next.
I currently have a film that I was director and writer and co-executive producer, a feature documentary called Proud in a Pandemic, that followed the queer community of downtown LA as a way of creating a time capsule of how did we get through it. If you are queer in this world today, you're alive, you've been through 4 pandemics: racism, homophobia, transphobia, HIV/AIDS, and now COVID. And we know how to get through pandemics. None of them are ended, including this one. But if it hadn't been for the queer community and the ACT UP specifically, we wouldn't have had jabs in our arms. So again, little mortals, you're welcome. But it features many of the great activists and leaders of Los Angeles. And it'll be, it's in festivals right now, and we'll be having a premiere here in Los Angeles in December. So pay attention to that from the DTLAproud.org.
So for me, there's a few things happening. First of all, I want to say the project that I was casting for, The Roof, will be coming out on Disney Plus in May of next year, and I really encourage you all to please watch it, because it talks on the subject of two-spirit people and the importance of coming out and acceptance. And we worked really hard on that and brought so many wonderful people together, like John Sneezy, Buffalo Barbie, Londa Lakes, Elle Frank, and then we discovered a beautiful two-spirit teenager who's going to be in there, and Mr. West Studio, of course, Delana Studio. And beautiful Florida, watch it. I know that Gabriela Ortega's Munchkin is here as well, so. But I think that it's so educational to that culture, and it's a voice that is often not heard. And just spreading the word is a lot to my two-spirit brothers and sisters. But also I was asked to also participate in, Michael D. Cohen has united like the Trevor Project and the Equal Rights Campaign, and created something called Never Alone, which is for trans youth, specifically families that have been targeted by these stupid ass laws that are targeting these families. And so if you could go and find another loan and donate, it would be very wonderful because it's a great cause for these families that are going through so much. Myself and the VP of Advocacy of CSA are going to meet these trans youths and talk to them and hopefully inspire them and encourage them. There's that, and also we're going to launch a LATINX initiative through the Trans Society of America, where we're going to be doing a worldwide conversation of the importance of Latinx representation, industry and non-industry, and then we're going to do an open call because we want to discover people around the world. So we want to see the people who are inside of Mexico, everybody who's Central American who's also not represented, Afro-Latinos who we still don't have representation. And for us people, like, why not? If we know, we were just having this conversation of, we never knew that this could be a profession, you know, especially in Mexico. Like, tenemos muchachas que son transgénero or no binarias, and they don't know that it's that it could be a career to be an actress or actor, and we want to see them. And so they have the opportunity to put themselves on tape and then send us the videos, and then we will create a database where any casting director or casting executive could access and then hire them if they really want to be, if this is what they're looking for. And so we're going to launch this December 5th. So please keep an eye on it. It's going to be called Mi Gente, Our History and Our Future. So, and I'll be personally handling that.
Well, thank you so much, and let's give a round of applause for our panelists for sharing their experience. I want to quickly with the organizers of the protest that we have some time for questions. Yes, we have time for questions. So, anybody have any questions, burning desires to know from our panelists? All right, I see one hand.
Actually, it's not a question. I want to say that is a comment. Thank you so much for this. My cousin just transitioned, so I was the one in my family that went through the entire process. I was explaining to my uncles and everything how to address her, how to be part of it. So this is a great initiative. I'm going to make sure she gets in contact with all of you. And I was raised in Brazil. And we have a character, I don't know if you've heard of her. Her name is Roberta Close. She was the first woman, transgender woman, to be on Playboy in 1984. And I was raised with that. And I have a good friend that she's transitioned to. She's a producer. And I remember when she transitioned, I went through the whole process and I educated people on it. And I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming forward and talking to us. And I think that all of us that, as I said, education is necessary to be out there. And I think all of us that have someone, not the first one, as I said, like that I know of, but I think everybody's always asking, and I always ask everybody about their pronouns, how they want to be addressed. And thank you so much for that. And for each one of you, there is this documentary about transgender women that play soccer in Ecuador. That is fantastic. They're putting it together, and I want to have the opportunity to maybe give you contact for them. It's called Fleets and Clubs. And I was mentioning their pitch for an event in Chile, and I think it's fantastic. And it's more of a comment just to say thank you, and I will be in touch with all of you because I want to help as well. I'm a distributor, to push out there and to get out there. And I didn't buy a film because it was a woman playing a transgender male. It was a good story, but I didn't buy it because I think representation is needed, and I want the actors to be there, and I want you to be represented. So it was just a comment. Thank you so much for doing this.
Awesome, I see another hand. And yeah, we'll make sure to connect.
Hola, muchas gracias. Una pregunta en español. ¿Algún mensaje que quieran que la comunidad latina tenga que saber, tener consciente como para mejorar, como hablando de cultura? Yo soy editora de la revista de cultura. Entonces, para mí es muy importante entender como que cuando hablamos con la comunidad latina y sabemos todo el machismo que existe dentro de nuestras propias familias a veces, ¿cuál es algún mensaje que quiere que nosotros llevemos, ¿no? A cabo y que tratemos como con el propósito de expandir espacio y crear un lugar seguro para personas no binarias o transgénero o personas que pertenecen a la comunidad LGBT en general, pero específicamente a la comunidad transgénero, especialmente porque en Latinoamérica sufre mucha violencia. Entonces, esta pregunta, por favor, se la podrán contestar en español. Sí. Y la pregunta, bueno, vamos a hablar.
Sí. Bueno, I'll be happy to take this to start it at least. Mi mensaje es: siempre hemos existido. Okay. Esto no es algo nuevo. En nuestras culturas, en nuestras raíces, ha existido particularmente, como digo, como he dicho, como por ejemplo las muchas. Somos gentes sagradas. Y por la colonización, han intentado de borrarnos de la historia y de nuestras raíces. Entonces, si de verdad tienen honra, digamos, en nuestra historia, en nuestra sangre, en quienes somos, you have to take a look a little bit closer to your history, you know? Y en esa sociedad que es machista, como dices, es muy importante de continuar la educación de nuestra cultura, de donde venimos nosotros. No nomás para en la educación española, en el cristianismo. Es algo que siempre hemos existido y somos seres humanos. Y entonces ese respeto es algo que debería ser una ley universal. Y por ejemplo, para mí fue muy mi familia es bien conservadora y nunca en sus vidas han tenido una mujer trans. Y para mí fue muy importante salir del closet para educarlos, porque okay, ¿para qué? No nos importa, o sea, why? You know, why should we worry about this? Okay, porque estoy aquí. Soy su cousin, soy su hijo, soy su nieto, su primo, lo que sea. Y es importante porque existo y existen. Si no quieren hablar de las mujeres trans o porque no, you're not related to them, pues aquí estoy. O sea, respeten a las mujeres trans o no binarias porque ya conocen a alguien conmigo. Trátenlas como me tratan.
Si puedo agregar un poco, si yo pudiera dar ese mensaje, que ese mensaje les llegara a la gente, es que espero que en nuestra comunidad latina pueda aprender el significado y practicar lo que es el amor incondicional, ¿verdad? Y también el cómo nuestras familias, ¿verdad?, contribuyen muchas de las veces a que la sociedad nos sitúe en donde estamos situados hoy en día, ¿verdad? Sabemos que muchas de las veces en nuestras familias, sobre todo en la comunidad latina, ¿verdad?, ya el hecho de que una persona gay o lesbiana, por decir así, que no salga del closet, como le dicen, ¿verdad?, es un poco más aceptable, pero cuando les decimos quiénes somos, ¿verdad?, como personas trans, no quieren aceptarlo, no quieren entenderlo y muchas de las veces nos echan a la cara. Y todo esto es como un efecto que se crea que nos lleva a donde estamos. Entonces, yo pienso que si podemos entender el significado de lo que es el amor incondicional, podemos cambiar todas las perspectivas.
Y para mí yo contestaré en un soundbite. Nuestra cultura cura y cura la ignorancia. Siempre hemos sido semilla y raíz del árbol de la vida de nuestro pueblo y nuestra gente. Y ese es mi mensaje.
Creo que también es importante que borren el estigma, porque creo que la razón por qué no quieren aprender, no quieren hablar con nosotros, porque les causamos miedo, digamos, es por el estigma.
No se pega.
Ajá, no se pega, o sea, guachu, que no vaya a convertir en, ¿verdad? No, pero no, eso es un estigma. Y porque son trans, o a lo mejor es prostituta y lo que sea, tampoco, o sea, nada de, no offense para lo que soy, porque conozco, son mis amigas también, ¿verdad? Pero digo, no todos son así. O sea, mira, soy un profesional, trabajo en Hollywood, soy una directora de casting, y ya como que ya me miran un poco más diferente, porque tienen un estigma que ha estado instalado en una historia muy antigua y se tiene que borrar ese estigma. Se tiene que reeducar.
And I'm getting a signal. We have one more question there in the back. Yes, I see you.
It's more of an observation.
Can you guys hear me?
It's more of an observation
Than a question. How many trans people are here in the audience besides, in the audience, how many? Okay. Somebody in the panel raised that our stories are told by other people, and that is very true. So as cisgender people, I want you to be very, very aware that 4 years ago, I've been a filmmaker for 20 years. So the people that staying over there, when I started as a filmmaker, I started working as that other person that I'm not. A beautiful human being, but not the person that I am.
and I went through the whole entire not wanting to tell people that I was trans because I was afraid that I was going to lose work.
Obviously, we're over that part. But 4 years ago, I did a search
Of trans films, and I came across this website that listed the 10 top films about transgender people, and not one of them had been written and directed by a trans person. That's a big problem, in case you're not aware. Nothing against this film. It's a beautiful film, and nothing against the filmmaker. But every time you talk about a trans film, the first thing that people say is Tangerine. And it's like, yeah, the one that was written by a white man who's not trans and not a person of color. We need to erase that. We need to have the go-to film about trans people has to be one that is written and directed by trans people. So cisgender people need to support trans people making their films and not cisgender people making films about us.
I want to add just a little bit to that, if I may. I think it's important to understand that there are stories, and there are, for example, actors. Yes, we do have people that are trans or non-binary that are there, but the conversation really lies in, do we, I think that we do, but most people don't have the resources or didn't grow up with the resources to get there. And that's a conversation that could go on and on and on, but it's like, it's important to realize that it's important to have to give those resources to these people, to these artists, to these filmmakers that deserve to tell the stories, but they never really had it. You know, like, I think that our work was kind of created before we came out, before we transitioned, but I think it's important to acknowledge that because of who we are, we never were given that opportunity, that chance to get there.
Thank you for sharing that. Pues el trans helicóptero ya llegó por la Bambi Salcedo, se tuvo que ir, se despide de nosotros, adiós. Bye. Se va a listar para la noche. También les tengo que recordarles que no se olviden que sean parte del festival. Today for the award ceremony, actually Bambi Salcedo is one of the recipients of the Tree of Life Award, El Árbol de la Vida. Super important that it is going to a trans person who's contributing. Point said by Case and by Candido, definitely super important to make sure that trans people are actually involved in the telling of our stories. And I think we said we have one more question that we have time for. Oh, we have two. We have a twofer. 2 for 1. I love a BOGO.
I just wanted to sort of piggyback on that comment as well with a question. First, I'm so thankful for this space and for this panel. I'm a cis white woman filmmaker, and I'm making a short film about a trans Latina. And I want to be as respectful of this space and of this community as possible. This is Nikki, my trans co-producer, and I'm trying to surround myself with as diverse of a crew and a community as possible. So I guess my question is, what would you like to see from a film like the one that I'm trying to make? I'm trying to make something from a place of compassion and of acceptance, and coming from a place of very strict religious upbringing. I'm trying to bring some of that perspective into this project, but I guess I just would love to hear from you how someone like myself can honor it and use my talent and my opportunities to tell a story like this
Well, first of all, for me, I would just say, I'm going to say for sure hiring a trans Latinx person, Latino person to work with you. I'm a consultant. If you got money, I got time. So we'll start with that one. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's true. You do need a consultant and give that deserved respect to that culture, the utmost respect to what you're doing, and acknowledgement to that consultant, because again, it's that voice that is necessary. So if she does get hired, to give the acknowledgement to them. But I think that the more that you demonstrate how much respect you do have and how much research you're putting into the project and things like that needs to be showcased. And you giving a human personal message that like this is what I did and this is what I entailed for the project, because it's something that matters to you, and that's something that also should be respected, because we should respect you as a filmmaker. For example, this Two-Spirit project that we did, the director is not Native, but he surrounded himself with, the writer is Native and Two-Spirit, the producer is Native, and just kind of surrounded himself with the right family. And just said, like, this is just of utmost importance to me, and I'm giving acknowledgement to all the beautiful people that are here. And that really shows. It really shows when a filmmaker cares about it deeply. That's what I heard.
It's an issue that's always out there for all filmmakers, right? And in this age of colonization, the understanding and the reckoning with colonization, and the understanding and reckoning with appropriation, and all of the things that normally surround the idea of it. And we've had horror stories all the time, right? We had Scarlett Johansson freaking stepping right in her own shit with Rub and Tug, right? That whole thing went crazy because she didn't have a heart in it. For her, it was just a project that could wait. The better solution to that one would have been, you're absolutely right, I should not be playing the role of Tex, but let me stay on as an executive producer and use my privilege and use my position in order to get an important story done. So that all comes down to just, again, being a human being, right? As artists, we owe it first to our own heart to dedicate that to the piece that we're going to make. That's one part of it. But filmmaking is not a solo, it's not painting, it's a community art. So making sure that you then stay a human in the objective conversation of being an artist in this day and age, follow the advice of my 2 fabulous colleagues here, and keep your heart in it, right? You obviously are attracted to this project for your own personal reasons, but you're attracted to it, you have to be, because if you aren't completely invested in your film, especially a short one, you're out of your fucking mind. Right? You have to be. That's the only thing that gets you through the middle of the night, right? But stay engaged in your heart so that you are doing all the right things, that you are recognizing it. Particularly, it would be the same about any culture that you decide to do a story about. You don't approach it as an artist with a cavalier attitude, or you will end up making a Marvel movie. Oh shit, did I say that? Right? But if you're going to make a real movie, you have to go and immerse yourself in the culture and the social mores of that culture. So you have to really dive in, and if you need to guide sometimes, I never walked into any of the foreign countries that I was, and I say foreign, obviously, because I'm an American girl, that without an unfucker. I started a local culture, a local producer who was there, who knew what the culture was. They knew not just the culture of the Amazon jungle, they knew who was the people to be in league with so that my crew didn't die. Right? The Amerindians that were there, we had a bunch of people around who walked around with guns and swag, and they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, but this man Junior, who was an Amerindian, he was the real power of that area. So if you don't figure that stuff out in any culture that you go into, you're never going to get out alive. So do that, but stay connected to your heart, always, and bring in the people. Because we are, as trans community and non-binary community, we're the first ones to be unemployed. So if you've got an opportunity for employment, call Queen Victoria.
You said the lead is a Latina trans woman, right? As a casting director who's Latino trans, you hire a trans Latina. Okay, yeah, that's so important, and it's going to be hard for a short film. Make sure that you raise enough money to be able to fly this person, I'm going to shoot here in the States. Yeah, so you raise enough money to be able to do a nationwide search and to be able to fly them and accommodate them, but you need to hire the actual representation because that's what we care about. You know, you're not going to hire somebody, God forbid, a white man to portray, a white cisgender man to play that, you know, but that's really important to me and to our community as well.
It's also the business of filmmaking. You don't make a movie that people aren't going to go watch. And all you have to do is tell the trans community that you hired a cis actor to play a trans character and your movie's not going to open. That's just dumb. But it's also dumb for a good reason, right? Because it's not about making bad movies.
Awesome. Okay. We have one. Oh yeah, we have one.
I have one more question. Okay, I guess I just want to say y'all are very so inspirational. I'm a trans filmmaker, and I guess I feel like I'm in a lot of situations where I'm on set or I'm on a grill, and I'm the only don't care about. And I'm the only trans person in the room, and there's been many times where I got invasive questions and situations where I have to explain for myself, and I feel like it's hard when you're the only person to set those boundaries for yourself and try to stand up for yourself. So I guess just what is y'all's process for navigating that kind of thing, where you're in those situations where you want to stand up for yourself in your community, but it's you're the only person, basically.
I think that there's definitely two ways to handle it. I've had situations where, for example, people have been working alongside, they're like, hey, I've never asked you if you had surgery. Do you have bottom, do you have bottom surgery? And I'm like, how big is your dick? And they're super confused, did you just ask me that? I'm like, that feeling you're feeling right now of impropriety, that's what I feel when you're asking me. Unless we're getting down to this conversation should be happening. But you still haven't answered my question. And that just really kicks people on the side of the head and kind of gets them into the perspective of realizing, oh, I'm asking something I shouldn't. Obviously, if that's not your style, it has to be authentic to who you are. I definitely think that one of the things that is useful from the workforce development side is we need to create something that makes it so that people who are on the job, it doesn't become their additional job to do that. That's why for me when I said working and creating something as that is an entity and I can't think on the spot of what that will be, we need to have some tangibility. And I'm committing myself and my resources in the Trans Empowerment Center to create something that will exist for trans and non-binary people in media. So I'm hoping that after this panel, every trans and non-binary person who is in the room, we could get together and I could deliver on the promise that I'm making right now.
Yeah, it's almost like a mobile HR department for trans films. Well, part of it is the adage is how many times did you come out today? Right, we're constantly coming out. I was walking out of my friend just moved her apartment into an apartment complex, and it's all musicians, and they all have studios connected with the apartments. And so this other woman was coming out from there, so she bumped into us and said, "Oh, are you all musicians?" And I said, "Well, we're the transgender chorus of LA." And she goes, "Oh, what's that?" I'm like, I don't have enough words. I don't have any different words to describe what it is, right? But my point is that as much as this is our world and we're involved in it, you're going to meet another person who has never even thought that we could possibly exist, which immediately shows me why we call them mortals, or what do they call them? The trait that the angels used to say about the humans in where Willem Dafoe plays Gabriel. Anyways, that reference will come to me as well. But we're always going to have to understand that. But as much as a trans woman who's now going to be, every time I have this complaint that I'm the only one in the room, every one of my cis women who are a little bit older than me, who have been in the film business that I respect really well, they all go, "Oh yeah, never had that feeling." Right? As women, we're always going to be the minority until we change it, which is why I've devoted most of my life and career to helping to change that. Right? But that's anybody. I've been on crews where, there's one black person, and they have to answer all those questions. So it's just when someone gets a couple of drinks and they're like, hey, one thing I've always wanted to ask. And it's like, yeah, you don't do that here, ever. You still don't do it, because what you just did is you othered. And that takes a long time for some people to ever understand what that feeling is, because they've never been othered. They don't know what that is. Or they have and they blocked it out, but they aren't applying it. Like asking about intimate questions, when you haven't, that wasn't even after 3 drinks.
They were completely sober.
I get that all the time.
I get that all the time.
I get it from like middle-aged cis women. Always go, when I first came out, they said, I have a lot of these women in my life because of some other work I do in the world, and they're like, oh, well, that's cool. So you're a woman, cool. Are you going to have the surgery? And at the time, I hadn't figured out the words to say this out loud to even my spouse. So this was news, and usually she was sitting right next to me, and I would say, yeah, who's got $100,000 in a year? And the cis women, their shoulders would drop because I wasn't going to be a real woman. And then they were going to still have to acknowledge me and be respectful. Then when I had gender-affirming surgery, they're like, oh my God, and they were sending me, it's a girl, teddy bears and stuff like that. So you don't know what the cliche is behind their response, just that once again, we're being othered, right? So you're going to have to do that. I'd say you're just going to have to stand up, because it's the same way when you first decided to put on heels and walk out of your house. It's going to have to do that. And I don't like it. I don't like that it has to be that way. I think we can come up with some solutions on the global kind of thing, but on a personal level, it's part of the process of learning to stand tall on your heels.
I think it's difficult because we have to be educators. We have to be teachers, right? We're coming out every day, just like you said. It's true. And for me, it's really important to continue the education, to just say like the reasons why this is inappropriate or whatever. But like, you also have to remember that you're a human being, and you only have so much bandwidth available. And I had to teach myself. Somebody said like, you don't have to be a teacher today. Today I can't. And it's difficult. It was difficult for me to accept that because I was so emotionally, mentally drained. Especially when I'm working, it's like what? Like, where did I have so many other things to worry about, and then now I get confronted with this, and so I just learned to say like that's so inappropriate. And then just tell them, like, I said like you know what, I don't understand. I don't know if this was intentional or what, but it's highly inappropriate, and I don't appreciate this conversation. And if you want, I could have a conversation with you in private some other time, but right now I don't have the bandwidth to do that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think the problem is a lot because of social media. We have ideas about how we're supposed to have that answer, because it starts flying around and it becomes like a soundbite, and then it becomes what your response is supposed to be. Like, it's such an inappropriate question, right? Whatever that answer is going to be at the time. I stepped into it the other day with my roommate, who is a 75-year-old man. He's in a location director, manager for giant feature films, and so he's this crotchety old guy who just remembers the old days all the time. And I had a couple glasses of wine to me, and he asked me this question of like, well, back when you were a boy, and I was never a boy. No, but you know what I mean. Back when you were a boy, I was never a boy. What would you? I can't even get my question out, right? And I was just hair trigger with, like, I've got to educate this old white motherfucker, and I got to push him back because I'm going to live with him. And I have to set some boundaries right now. It took us an hour of this arguing to realize that what he was trying to say was not even the question that I was defending myself from. So the other part is, you can also step back from the cultural wars, just to protect yourself. Just smile it off like you would any other idiot who just cut you off on the freeway.
Well, thank you all. We've come to the end of our panel today. Again, if we could give a round of applause to our panelists. Alvin, your Taylor. It was a pleasure. Have fun. Make sure to be part of the film festival, and don't forget to attend the awards if you're going to be out there. And I'll get on over to you.
Thank you so much for coming. I want to remember, I forgot to mention this, something important. All our box office revenue is going to LATINX, which is Bambi Salcedo's foundation. Shouldn't say it like that. So please go to our website, donate, support her, support the cause, the community. I think is really, really important. And also, if you didn't have a chance to catch up with our programming, we're going to start doing our streaming and starting tomorrow, so you can actually watch all our films. Go to glaff.org, GLAFF.org, and you can watch all our programming. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.